The Bracero Program is something else. It successfully brought Mexican workers, giving them an opportunity, a true victory. It was all good, but what did it really cost?
The standards for the working conditions, living quarters, food, and welfare for the Mexican worker. This program is without doubt well carried out.
This was a dream. Coming to the US, being able to finally earn some type of money. It was supposed to be a win-win situation. Braceros would be able to send money back home for the wives and kids. They could have been able to pay debts and be able to afford meals. That was a huge opportunity. But reality isn't always as happy as you want it to be. At least not in this case. See, back in 1940, we were in a little something called World War II. It affected the US a lot, obviously. One of the things it affected was labor jobs, specifically agricultural, which would have been bad for the US if it would have collapsed. The US was big in agriculture, so they turned to the Mexican workers. They were happy to give some aid, especially because back in Mexico, life was hard, not many opportunities, so being able to come to the US would have been a good thing. Mexican immigration had already been happening since the beginning of the century. This big opportunity would not only help Mexican workers have something, but it was going to help the United States with their agricultural labor problem. On August 4th, 1942, the Mexican Farm Labor Program Agreement was signed, giving the opportunity for workers to come to the US. And on April 23rd, 1943, Public Law 45 was sanctioned by Congress, solidifying the workers' rights. Public Law 45 guaranteed minimum wage and humane treatment such as housing, healthcare, and even promising no discrimination. In 1951, there was even an extension to the Bracero Program. Its goal was to bring even more workers to the United States to help with labor during war effort. Thanks to Mexican workers, American agriculture did not slow down. It might have been scary coming to a new country, but it would have been worth it. Between the years of 1942 and 1964, the year it all ended, approximately 4.6 million braceros came to the United States to work. Both sides got what they wanted. Mexican workers had jobs, and the US had people willing to work when nobody else would. As stated before, it was a win-win.
If labor is not on hand when the crop is ready, the crop and the farmer's investment is lost, which is why days before his harvest date, he revisits the Farm Placement Service to see whether enough seasonal domestic labor is available to meet his specified needs.
Coming to the US, people would have to pay 1,000 pesos or 1,000 pesos, which is about $100 to $200 at the time, in order to be on the list of people applying for the Bracero program, which 1,000 pesos might not seem like a lot, but for people who were poor, it was a lot. But either way, they paid the fee. Next, they would go to a migratory station. Most people would use a train, but depending on where you were from, some would ride buses. The people who would go to California would first take a stop to Empalme, Sonora. There would be approximately 124,000 applicants for the program during busy days. Some would be stationed there for 2 to 3 months. They weren't working at the time, so they would beg others for food. All of them wanting to get their names called so they can go where they will be sent to work. A process like this should only take 2 to 3 days, max a week, but people would wait for weeks. Some would use banana peels and watermelon shells as alternatives to food. Once called, they were given medical exams. Those who did not seem like capable workers would be sent back, with zero form of transportation or money to get back home. But most passed, specifically younger people. The braceros would cross the border using a train, and from a train to buses. Many were in very bad health condition due to what they had to go through back in Empalme. Once in the US though, they'd have to get stripped down in order to be fumigated with insecticide, which is toxic and a little dangerous. It would cause for some of the workers to faint and get dizzy. Not only would they get fumigated, so they're all of their clothes. Some of you guys guessed Public Law 45 was broken. the United States broke their promise, or at least the corporations did, due to legislative loopholes and inadequate budget. Braceros were exploited, in other words. The Braceros helped the corporations generate good money. Their wages were not what they were promised. Fake payroll slips were also very common. By the time they had enough money to send back home, it would barely be enough to pay the debts, so the families in Mexico were always back in square one. Homes were not very pleasant, to say the least, and hours worked were sometimes not accounted for. If anyone would speak up, they would be immediately deported. That's the reason there wasn't people like Cesar Chavez, who spoke up for their fellow workers' rights until the 1960s, because if you were to go on strike, you were to immediately be sent back home. They were tied to a contract. Companies treated braceros like a commodity, and not like normal workers. They came to the United States poor, but stayed poor. But they had no other choice. Back in Mexico, they were already poor, but without a job. So the braceros were willing to go through this because at least here, they were getting paid something, even if it wasn't what they were promised. Many justified their treatment because they were still earning more money than what they would have earned back in Mexico. But that does justify the fact that many braceros were treated unfairly. Some braceros recall only getting paid as low as 20 cents an hour, which is a little less than half of minimum wage back in the 1950s.
Que sacaba uno, pescaba uno 100 cajas, le pagaban una pendejada a uno. Y en la carga, pues nos la pagaban, no me acuerdo si 7 centavos o 8 centavos la caja, no estoy seguro. Cargábamos 8,800 cajas diarias de tomate. Y no podía dejar uno el tomate hasta otro día porque echaba a perder, no podía entrar a la canaría. Ahí en Somerton, Arizona, yo llegué a agarrar cheques de a 1 centavo por semana. De lo que me quitaban del borde del lonche. Y un penny me dieron una vez un cheque de 1 penny. Los demás cheques nos salían de a libres, nos salían de a $2, $15 por semana.
Many braceros would get injured. Just imagine working for about 10 or 12 hours with the hot sun hitting your back while you were bending it. This would happen specifically in places like Arizona, where the temperature can easily reach up to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. People would get so dehydrated they would just collapse. You weren't allowed to drink water until you reached the other side of the field. By the time the braceros were done working, they would be so dizzy and tired. The workers who collapsed were not taken care of medically, but instead were just placed on a truck until they recovered by themselves. Living conditions were rough as well. The barracks were very small. It was very tight, so not many space to even stretch. Some of these barracks were either missing a bathroom or a kitchen. To top the sleeping problem, bracero workers would also have to sleep in the heat because the barracks did not have air conditioning. The workers were not taken care of medically, so instead they had to go through all of that pain in order to keep making a couple of cents. Families were also supposed to be given some type of compensation money if a family member who was a bracero passed away. None of these checks have been received. Although its success, it came to an end. The Bracero Program at its time was very controversial. Many Americans believed that the braceros would compete for the lower wage job. Also, many of the people contracted were not braceros and were in fact wetbacks, which are Mexicans who crossed the border illegally. All of this, plus the mechanical cotton harvester, all contributed to the Bracero Program's end. Once they were sent home, most braceros were not given a pay that was withheld from their checks, no compensation money. After the program ended, people still kept crossing the border to find jobs. The wave of Mexican immigration still occurs to this day, with approximately 400,000 in 2018, and those are the only ones to be counted. Mexican immigration is still a relevant topic, especially as of early of 2019, with President Trump wanting to build a border to separate Mexico and the United States. None of the braceros have received recognition. The Bracero Program still remains an unspoken part of U.S. history. You can go ask anyone, wherever you are, and it's most likely that they won't know what you mean when you say Bracero Program. It's sad to know that nobody knows about this harsh event in our history.